really and truly any support you feel like you can offer, whether it's a note or, anything, it all means something to someone who's experiencing grief.
Yeah.
Life as a mom, entrepreneur, wife, friend, and human is a lot. Join me, Katie Jacobs.
And me, Brandy Chandler, every Thursday as we have unfiltered, hilarious, and relatable conversations about the ups, the downs, and the chaos of it all.
Pour a glass and pull up a seat.
Because you're always welcome at our table. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Brandy.
I've missed you.
I missed you too.
I really did.
I know. I missed you too.
Welcome to She Did What.
Welcome to She Did What.
We're a little somber today.
I know. I don't know if we're going to have a lot of funnies in this one, but I think it's an important topic, and
yes,
it's something I think a lot of people are experiencing at our age.
That was a very important point I wanted to touch when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about this morning. So today's episode is She Did Grief.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a timely manner in which we are talking, she's going already, in which we were talking about this because Katie's father passed away unexpectedly 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, not even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we are at that age where this is an issue. Our parents are getting older.
I really debated doing this today, but it felt like, I think something that's been important to us is always being ourselves. And this is very raw. And I think what better time than when it's raw, because grief, unfortunately, doesn't really have a timeline. And I don't think it'll ever be easy. So I figure why not talk about it when I think also when everything's very fresh, because I think time can sort of dull things. And so I think it's actually also an interesting time to document it for myself, for, my family. And so, yeah, I just, there was a lot that went into making the decision to record this early, but I felt like it was really important for some reason. So bear with me on this one.
I mean, we started this podcast because we wanted to share all these things that were going on in our lives, and we knew it was happening to other people, but we weren't talking about it as openly as we thought we should be able to.
That's right.
And I agree with you. I would be curious if we did a follow-up in a couple of months and, see the differences, because grief is, I feel like it's almost like a blanket. Like, it's there and you can feel it. Sometimes it's lighter than other times. Sometimes it feels heavy. Sometimes it feels lighter, but you can always tell it's there. So yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a journey for you. Not necessarily bad, but it's going to change. I feel like that's normal. For everyone.
Yeah, I think grief probably, I would have to imagine it evolves. And so I don't know. I'm just in it. The blanket is heavy right now. It's a weighted blanket.
Yes.
There's a couple of them.
But there can be comfort in a weighted blanket.
That's actually very true. Wow. Damn, Brandy.
Philosophy 101. So what would you like to start with? Do you want to tell the whole story?
Yeah, I'm just going to tell kind of the story because it was so unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and mom moved about 30 minutes away from my house last year to be closer. So my dad had been in the hospital a couple weeks before because he had a stomach ulcer that was bleeding, and totally fine, gets home, everything's fine, to the point where my mom had a little getaway with her best friend planned, and she went on it. He was like, yes, go. I mean, he even took her to the airport. And then on Memorial Day, my mom called me. She was flying in that day, and she said, your dad's not really feeling good. Can you go check on him? So I ran over that morning, and he was not well, but he was refusing. I was like, Dad, we have to get you to the hospital. And my dad hated hospitals, didn't like doctors. He just didn't like any of that. And he It's like weird to talk about him in the past tense too. It's stuff like that. It just hits you and you're like, anyway, my dad didn't like any of that. So he was just refusing. And I called one of my best friends who's a nurse and I said, can he refuse an ambulance? And she said he absolutely can. So I took care of him that day, fed him, sat with him. And my mom, JJ, had to go pick up my mom from the airport. There were really bad storms that afternoon. Her flight had been delayed. So JJ, my husband, went to pick her up from the airport. And I had to go home to be with my kids because I didn't want him driving all three of my kids in storms in Atlanta traffic. I just didn't feel safe with that. So I set my dad up. I went home. JJ got my mom there. And the next morning we were set to go up to the mountains. We had like a 4-day in the mountain. And I called my mom and she said, I got him to the hospital. He's settled in a room. They're trying to figure out what's going on because I was uncertain of whether we should go. And she said, no, everything's fine. Go on your trip, So we were checking in over the next few days and turns out he had some kind of infection and they just could not figure out what it was. So the day we got back, I went to the hospital. The day that we got back, we I went straight to the hospital and talked to the nurse. And like, he has an infection. We're bringing in the infectious disease team. We just can't figure out where it is. And his blood pressure's low. His white blood cells are really high. So long story short, this went on for a week. And every day I would leave work and go sit with him at the hospital while he, didn't eat dinner. And I would talk to the nurse, try to get there to see a doctor if they were rounding. Like Saturday morning, I went at like 7. Anyway, long story short, they just couldn't figure out what it was. But he's like in a regular room, like he's talking, he's completely normal. He's like having a business call, all this stuff. So I'm just like thinking, okay, they're going to figure this out, get him on the right antibiotic and he'll be out in a couple days. And then Wednesday, 2 weeks ago, not even, what day is it? It's Tuesday today. So
yeah, just shy.
I was leaving work and I was going to go to the hospital and I got a call from my mom. She was frantic. She had gone home to do something. She had left the hospital, gone home to do something, and they were rushing my dad to the ICU. His blood pressure had dropped dangerously low. So I quite literally ran up there, got there in about 10 minutes, and they were running a line to stabilize his blood pressure in the ICU so they wouldn't let me back. And then a couple minutes later, they let me back, and I could tell it was not good. There were tons of machines. There was a lot of action, a lot of people in the room. And the infectious disease nurse said, introduced herself. And she just gave me a quick rundown of what was going on. And I said, is my dad going to die? And she said, I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening. And I was very obviously upset. And I turned around to my dad, who was awake and coherent. And yeah.
I'm surprised.
And she said, I have to put your dad on a ventilator. So I want to give you a minute with him, but I have to move quickly.
Because I'll have to sedate him for that.
Yeah. And she said, but I'm going to give you a minute with him. And I had a conversation with my dad. And I turned around and I said, he saw how upset I was when I turned around, and he said, oh, I'm so sorry you're sad. And I was like, I'm so sorry you're not feeling good. I just grabbed his hand and, just was stroking his head. And he was like, yeah, it's been a really rough day. Aww. And I said, I'm so sorry. They're going to get you feeling better. They're going to get you to the other side of this. And he just said, okay, I'm just really tired. I'm going to close my eyes. And I just, we told each other we loved each other and held hands. And I was stroking his head and gave him a kiss on the cheek. And he just kind of closed his eyes and fell asleep. And then the doctor came back in and said she had to, get moving. So I had to leave the room. I knew that moment. I walked out and I called my husband. And I said, I think I just said goodbye to my dad. I think he just died. And I weirdly wrote down the whole conversation we had. That felt very important to remember because my dad and I had a complicated relationship. It was difficult as an adult. And for some reason, that moment of us both saying we were sorry to each other, it felt like I was the one to say goodbye to him because we had that unfinished business. And it felt like we said so much in such a little amount of time. And I felt so much peace.
In so few words.
In so few words. It was like all I ever wanted him to say to me was that he was sorry that I was upset. And I think all he wanted to hear from me is I was sorry he was hurting. My dad had a really, really bad, difficult childhood. And it made his life, he overcame so much to be everything he could be. And, it was a very hard night. And then my mom came up, and when I went back in the room with my mom, my husband went and got my mom and got her to the hospital, and he was gone. I just could tell he was
even though he was still alive, you could tell.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, it just felt that way.
You just knew. Yeah. You knew it was the end.
So he was on a lot of support, and my mom stayed the night with him. They wanted to run another CT scan. And so they did that. I went and got my mom some stuff to stay the night and be comfortable. And I stayed with her until about 12:30. And then I went home, and we have a really good friend who's an ICU doctor, and he called JJ first thing in the morning, and he said, you've got to get Katie over here. So I got over there, and my mom and I had a talk with our friend who's a doctor, and he just said, they had started bedside dialysis that morning because he was just, his every organ was failing.
Yes.
And yeah, my mom and I had to make the decision with my brother. We called my brother in Montana, and we made the decision to take him off support that morning. And my mom wanted to just go ahead and do it quickly because our friend said, if we're waiting for someone to get here, they would need to get here by this afternoon. So we held the phone up while my brother said goodbye. My mom said goodbye, and then we took him off all support and held his hand while he took his last breaths. And then we had to do the difficult thing of calling family members who didn't even know he was in the hospital.
Yeah, because it was so quick.
It was just, we just thought he was coming out. Like, it didn't even feel important enough we were just like, oh, he's sick. He's going to get out. So
well, especially with an ulcer, I know we spoke about that. Like, as soon as they figured out what was wrong the first time, we were like, oh, they can fix that.
Yeah, and it was.
And we were relieved.
And then it's just like, he's fine, and he's out, and he's walking around like normal. And it just, seeing him on all that support was difficult. That image is like in my head a lot. And one of my friends said, I want you to, every time that's like, because it was just pervasive the first 24 hours. She said, I want you to find a picture of your dad and look at that. Anytime that image is like, she said, just look at him as he really was, So
I think it's such a blessing too that he was so coherent, that you were able to really converse with him. Because a lot of times when people are that sick, their minds aren't really with it either. So that was a beautiful conversation you guys had. And I think you're going to be really thankful for that one day, as hard as it is, to think about it now. And it comes with a lot of feelings. I think in a few years, you're going to love that conversation.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
A day later that I got we got to say so much and so
that
little.
Was very beautiful.
It was really beautiful. It was really beautiful. It just, the whole thing, I went to their house the next day, my parents' house, which was,
I feel like that's a really hard.
It was it was very hard. And I can't even remember why now. We had to do something, and I don't remember what it was. Oh, my dad, the day before, had been frustrated. He wanted to pay these bills, and like for some reason I couldn't stop thinking about that. Like, I've got to pay these bills for my dad and make sure my mom's whatever. Like, it was just, I couldn't stop. I was just like, after he passed, I was like, I've got to pay these bills. JJ was like, it's okay,
like the last
Katie.
thing he talked to you about or
it was
wanted you to do
like
for
I was
him.
obsessing over it.
Yeah.
So I had to go get these bills, and anyway, we went to the house and I started thinking about all the way things had lined up, that my parents moved from Kennesaw to Watkinsville, about 30 minutes from my house, from an hour and a half.
And you're like a 10-minute walk from the hospital.
And how everything lined up, and like they hadn't even unpacked boxes in a lot of rooms. And I was like, thank you, like, Dad, for sacrificing to make this easier for Mom and I, and then I started thinking through, I was like, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have seen my dad probably, and I wouldn't have been able to be at the hospital, and I wouldn't have been able to, and and all of these things, I started to think of the domino effect of how things lined up, and the care he got at the hospital was incredible. Every nurse, every doctor, having our friend, help us through that process and pronounce him. I don't know why that was important to me.
Oh yeah, very important.
So just all of these things kind of happening in the way that they did, in the manner they did, and I feel like it was like a final, I don't know, kind of sacrifice on my dad's part to like get things in order somehow. I don't know. So it's been a really difficult kind of untangling of this grief, a lot of guilt, a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Coming up.
I want to thank you so much for sharing that story. It really was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's super sad right now.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's going to maybe be an uplifting story one day.
I know it will be.
Yeah.
So that's where we are.
You're doing good.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for sticking with me.
I mean, I feel like that's, for anyone who's never been with someone who is passing or in person or really experienced that, I think that's an important story to listen to because I feel like it's going to happen at some point in your life.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Because a lot of people have never been there.
I had never been there, So, I mean, our dog passed away, but I've never, like
it's a little different.
That's the most, and I say that to say that was like the most grief I'd ever experienced and worked through. And that was difficult. And when you have a relationship with someone like a parent and they've known you your entire life and then, yesterday I was back at their house and I was kind of looking for some photos for my dad's, we're going to have a celebration of life next month. And I was looking for photos and, you just, I don't know, if you have a more complicated parent-child relationship, I think the grief hits a little different. I would have to imagine, because there's just a lot to work through.
Well, and there's a lot of, like you said, at that point, you can see more of the complete picture and you kind of understand some things you might not have understood when they were still here because you were still having this relationship and there were still complications going on. But I feel like you get a little glimpse of clarity on some things.
Yeah.
At this point.
Well, and at the end of the day, my dad and I loved each other and he's my dad. And, everything, he made me the person I am. And I'm still working through that part of things.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around a lot of that. So, TBD. But, there's just, there's a lot of love for him and a lot of love for, I was looking at old pictures and just he overcame, like I said, and getting also, so poignant, The Help You Need, or the podcast that week was The Help You Need. And my aunt and uncle flew in literally, well, my aunt's in Montana and she had to take 2 flights, but my uncle was at our house by, I think, 6 p.m. And my dad passed away at 10 a.m. My uncle flew in, my dad's brother and my aunt, my dad's sister flew in the next day. And, it was like I just almost, when they said they were going to fly in, I felt guilty. I was like, oh God, they don't need to, we're just sitting here crying. And it was like, they they saved us. I mean, when I tell you having them with us saved us, it was the help we needed.
Yeah.
And I would have never asked them to do that, but they did it. And my uncle is brilliant and gregarious and hilarious. And my aunt is comforting and the most positive person I've ever met. So when they came in, my uncle just kind of took over, you know, handling things.
Yeah.
And my aunt was just an incredible emotional support. We went on miles and miles of walks every day. She could see me getting antsy and we'd strap on some shoes and just go walk and talk and cry and, you know, just the help you need. It was just like, I just had, I don't know. I'm really grateful for them. And I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, that's a beautiful story to all of it too. The help you need. I mean, and you don't know you need it, and there it is. And then you're like, I totally needed it.
Oh, yeah. And just friends. And a lot of my friends called me, you know, they picked up the phone and called me, texted me, you know, throughout the, you know, up in I've 2 texts. I've like texts every day from friends, how, you know, checking in, just want you to know I love you. You know, that just means a lot. It's because I think people get scared by grief. It makes them very nervous.
Yeah. I mean, we had slated on our list of topics at one point, like, how do you help a friend who is grieving? I've had multiple friends lose parents and siblings the past few years, and I just don't know what to do. Like, it seems so irrelevant to send them a meal or to do something like that. But yet, I don't know what else to do, you know, because sometimes they have a lot of family in town. So it's not like you can just go over and barge in the middle. You want them to have that time with their family.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think just pick up the phone and call and follow up text. I mean, all of my best friends called me and, you know, have been texting and, I would say don't back away and saying, I just like one of my childhood best friends who knew my dad very, very well, Lindsay, she lives in Boise, Idaho now. And she called me. She happened to call me when I was at my parents' house on Friday. And it just happened to be a moment that I just really needed to talk. And she was sobbing and kept saying, I don't know what to say to you, Katie. I'm just so sad for you. And we just cried together. And that's okay. That's actually great. Like,
it was just good support.
She didn't know what to say. She said, I just don't know what to say. And I said, I don't know either. And we just cried. And I just started talking and I just stream of consciousness for probably half an hour, just talked. And she just sat and listened. And, it was what I needed in that moment. You know, I'd been wandering around my parents' house for an hour, just room to room, just like in a daze. And in the first 2 days after grief, it feels like, or, you know, the first 2 days for me specifically were really bizarre. Like I felt like my head was attached on a balloon with a string and it would be in like another room from me. Like I can't describe the feeling. I just felt completely detached.
Yeah.
I felt totally detached from myself. And I just couldn't think straight. Everything. I would get up to go to the bathroom and, you know, or, you know, feed my dog or take care of a kid or whatever it was. And I would immediately have to sit back down. I just felt so heavy, so tired. So it's just weird.
Yeah.
Just weird. But anyway, support your friends, I think, by just, you know, picking up the phone. And we had friends bring food, and that was really helpful because we had all these people flying in, and we're not thinking about, and no one has an appetite that's like immediate, but then people flying in haven't probably eaten in 24 hours. So that was really lovely. Just, you know, offering support, whatever that feels like to you, whatever you're moved to do, do it. Because everything is appreciated. It really and truly, any support you feel like you can offer, whether it's a note or, you know, anything, it all means something to someone who's experiencing grief.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say to that.
That's good to know. A huge thank you to this week's sponsor, Had an Estate at Damn Good Dog Farms, located in Watkinsville, Georgia. You know DGD Farms as your go-to for all things blueberry picking and weddings. It's a destination in Northeast Georgia. But did you know that Haddon Estate also offers a full experience wine tasting room with artisan charcuterie boards, sandwiches, sweets, and even a kids menu? With live music every Sunday afternoon this summer and rotating seasonal wines and boards, you're going to be blown away by this indulgent experience. Haddon Estate also features The Lodge, a 7-bedroom estate home that sleeps 22 people with a pool and hot tub right on the estate grounds. It's the perfect way to spend a game day weekend with all your friends or spend a special event enjoying all that Haddon Estate at DGD Farms has to offer. Mention the podcast for 10% off your tab at the winery at DGD Farms and say hi to Katie and I this summer when you see us on the patio. For more info, visit haddonestate.com or follow them for all the news and events at Haddon Estate on Instagram.
Something else that helped me, my friend sent me a schedule. I was
What kind of schedule?
I said, I was like, I don't know how to get out of bed. And she sent me a schedule. Wake up, brush your teeth, drink a big glass of water, wash your face. She sent me just like, I swear to God, it helped.
No,
because I would have just laid
that
in bed with, dirty teeth in my pajamas for days.
Yeah, because you're just so consumed.
Yeah. So she gave me...
And in shock that you don't even know how to do those daily things. Oh, I can see that being helpful. That's
it was
interesting.
Weirdly helpful. And I felt like there was accountability there. And, she'd be like, hey, checking in. Are you on the schedule?
Yeah.
Even just having that glass of water, like all of those things helped.
Yeah.
Just make me feel like I was... And then the schedule through the week, like it got a little easier. And,
And then you're back.
Yeah.
At least on daily functioning.
Yeah. So that was a really nice thing to have done.
I've never heard of that. That is very interesting and unique.
She's a good friend. What's your relationship with grief? Have you lost anyone close to you? Has tragedy ever struck that you've had to deal with?
Yeah. I mean, we grew up in the South and all of our families were from here. So we were always at the funeral home. There's always somebody who was dead. But they were, old people, and I wasn't there for most of it, Even my first grandmother, my grandfather's passed before I was born, and my first grandmother to pass was when I was in college. And it was sudden. She just had a heart attack. Other than that, she was in pretty good health and lived by herself. So, and she wasn't that old. I think she was turning 70 that year. But I wasn't, with her when she passed or anything. My other grandma passed and I was closer to her probably. We were neighbors. She passed when I was pregnant with Josiah. And I took care of her a lot. She was on home dialysis, and she kind of had her body started failing first, and then she had a steep mental decline.
Oh.
And it was just family drama. She had signed over her medical rights to one of the sons, but no one else really knew that. It was just one of those things. And it wasn't probably the son that made the best choices for her care. So it was hard to watch those things. But I was in the room with her and my dad and his brother when she passed. And it was very special. Yeah. I mean, she was completely out of it. And had she didn't know who I was probably for weeks. Mm-hmm. And because I was very pregnant, I had Josiah the next week. So I was very pregnant. So sometimes she would recognize me just because I was pregnant. And that was kind of special. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was with her in the room when it happened. And it's definitely, I don't know the right word, a unique experience. Yeah. I mean, it was a beautiful experience, as weird as that is to say. It was very special to be there. But that's the first time I've really been in the situation with someone.
Did you feel like when she passed, her soul, did you feel anything?
Physically, I could feel it. Yeah. I felt a rush of wind. It was crazy. Yeah. Talk about my spiritual connection to God. like amplified like crazy after that experience.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things you read in the Bible, I mean, I could physically feel them. So that was very unique and special to me on another level, you know, even though that was my grandparent I was closest with. So yeah, it's hard to talk about it in like a way where you can get your feelings across.
Right.
Do you feel like that?
Yeah. I think in terms of being in a room with someone who is in the process of passing, it's so weird. You know, I was thinking about this. I was like, I was in this hospital just 3 years ago, and I wanted, it was very important that I delivered Mac. Like I removed him from my body. That was something I
Pulled
wanted.
him out.
I did. It was something I really wanted to do. And I like delivered my baby 3 years ago. And then I, you know, had the honor of, you know, seeing my dad to
It is an honor. That's
the
a good
other
word.
side and to be with him while he left his, you know, his soul and spirit left his body. And, I told my brother, I was like, I know it seems weird to you that I was the one there, but I said, I think we had, you know, the most business that we needed
to take care of.
We needed to sew up.
So were your brother and your dad closer on a like daily relationship?
Yeah.
Like?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. They talked a lot more. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, but I saw my dad more.
Yeah.
Obviously because of the distance but he and my dad, I think emotionally were closer. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, it's hard to explain to other people, you know. And then my husband, because he's been a firefighter and he's like stopped at wrecks and been helping someone. And he's like, I think he passed while I was holding his head up. And I'm like, how? You know, he's like pulled dead people out of fires. I don't know how they do it.
I don't know either. I don't know. I mean,
like, do you have a connection to all of these people?
It's
even if they're like strangers. I need to ask him that.
Ask him that.
I do. I mean, I know it like haunts. I don't know, is haunt the right word, but I know it. He thinks about it for days after. You know, and it's just. Yeah, we need to have him on the podcast.
Yeah,
can you imagine? If he like, I'm not cut out for this.
I regret everything.
I feel like
we need to have the boys on the podcast. That would be fun. There are always in these moments of deep and heavy grief moments that are funny.
Yeah.
And there were actually, my uncle is one of the funniest people I've ever met. He's a whole podcast. He's built an insanely successful business, but like looks like just the dude next door in Florida. Like and he's brilliant and has, you think I have a mouth. He makes me look like Shirley Temple. It's just obscene, but everyone loves him.
Yeah.
And there's not, I mean, you could put him in a room with the most conservative, God-fearing, you know, little old lady, and she'd fall in love with him. He's just like that. So he had us rolling, you know, with stuff and you know, and the first night that he came in, we just sat and told stories.
That's a very special part.
Yes. And it's just so natural. Like everybody ends up in a room. We got the kids down and we just all started telling stories and, you know, dad doing this antic and this time and that. Some were very sad and some were very funny and just all of them special. And that I think is a huge part of the grieving process and why it's important to have family or friends or people come around so that you can have that portion of the process.
This sounds weird to say, 2 of my most favorite funerals
I have not been to as many as you.
Were my dad's best friend died probably 10 or 15 years ago. He was very young, but he had bad health his whole life. And he was one of those people like your uncle. I mean, everybody loved him. Little old women, kids, everyone in between. He was just the life of the party at all times. His funeral home was like standing room only, if that, like people flooding out of the funeral home. And it was just, they just opened the floor So everyone just told these hilarious,
that's
like it was
great.
just hilarious story after hilarious story after
What an
hilarious
honor.
story. And it was like when you say celebration of life, like funerals are just, bleh.
Yeah.
Nobody likes a funeral. I mean, this was probably the first true celebration of life.
Right.
And people were crying. It doesn't mean you
Sure.
can't cry,
Oh, no.
but we were really celebrating the person that he was.
You're laughing, you're crying. It's just, it's a great way to honor someone's life and legacy, I think,
Mhm.
to do both at the same time sometimes.
Yeah.
But we received a lot of flowers, beautiful flowers.
I almost sent you flowers, but like I didn't know the
oh my gosh,
arrangement.
we
So I was like,
had-
am I just sending them
well,
to her
we-
house?
We had a lot of flowers. And my mom loves flowers. So every delivery we got, she would talk about it and look at
She
it.
would
and
just love on them.
put it, what is this flower? Oh my gosh. And it smelled, I mean, my mom, it's like her love language. So it was really beautiful that she was
sweet.
surrounded. But she just, at one point we got like 2 or 3 arrangements like throughout the day. And she goes, and she said this multiple times, like when we've had a lot of flowers in the house, she'll be like, goodness gracious, it looks like a funeral home in here. And, we just all started cracking up because it's like, well, kind of.
It is, Mom.
Mom, it is. And, she just said it, not thinking about what she was saying, which was cute,
We have a lot of peace lilies.
We had lilies. We had, just the most beautiful. We had so many beautiful flowers I've never even, there were 2 flowers we couldn't identify. That was, an hour of our day. So
Just a good distraction.
I texted a couple friends that I knew had like some stuff going on. I was like, tell me this, what's going on, distract me, like if I was just having a difficult, I just needed to get out of here.
Well, speaking of, that's what I always try to do with my friends. It's like I try not to talk about the person that passed so they can have a minute to just kind of have a normal conversation and like have a little brain break from the situation. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's always been my
I think ask
my
right
thing.
Like I think the best, we've talked about this so many times.
Well, like if they bring it
hey,
up,
do you want to talk or do you want to just distraction?
Like if they're not bringing it up, I'm not going to bring it up. I'm like, obviously that's not on your agenda today. So
sure. But also I think, yes. Yeah. And I think that's a good tactic because one of the unexpected, I have sort of some unexpected sidebars to grief that I jotted down yesterday. I was really, I've had a lot of anxiety around seeing people.
Like who?
Anybody.
Like me.
Anybody.
Aww.
Like seeing anyone that knows my dad passed because I was nervous.
Do you feel like do you not like retelling the story or like getting all the questions?
I just think, think it's just like, how are other people going to react to me? Like, am I going to make them uncomfortable? Anyway, but I was so anxious about coming to work. And I decided I went for a run yesterday and I stopped in for about an hour and everyone just treated me normal. And that was exactly what I needed. I just didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to kind of come in and have a little bit of normalcy for like an hour and not be, because my dad left behind a business with 25 full-time employees. My dad left behind an estate that was not, we were having to go there. My dad left things he left life suddenly. There was no planning for this. And there's a lot of untangling. This is not just grieving my father. It's worrying about 25 employees that he employed. It's worrying about, is there a car payment? It's like the things that my brain went to pretty quickly after he passed because I knew my dad knew I would take care of my mom because she is struggling. She's having a very difficult time, obviously. They were going to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary July 19th. She's struggling. And I think my dad knew I would take care of her. So it's very important for me to like stay on top of things for her. Anyway, so there's just a lot going on and I have a lot of anxiety and it just feels like seeing people feels heavy and like I'm anxious about that.
Well, and you don't want to take something else on. So
yeah. So
it's almost like you need everybody to be chill.
Yes.
Be chill, everybody.
Yeah. Like I got it out. I got to like, not got it out. I got to cry a lot and have a lot of these heavier conversations. I'm still working through a lot of it at home, but I just need a little just a touch normalcy.
Yeah, for a few hours.
For a few hours,
Just
while
a
I'm
little
working
normalcy
through all
break.
these other things, with his death and our grief and his estate. So, walking grief out has been really helpful. Going on these really long walks has been really helpful. Like miles and miles and miles of walks. Just, I don't know. It's just like really helped.
I love a good walk.
It just helped so much. And my aunt came with me. My mom actually did a nice long walk with me yesterday. So that's been lovely. Another unexpected sidebar is the legality and paperwork. You're simultaneously grieving and being hit over the head by an estate and things you have to do pretty quickly when things are left suddenly, which makes you think about, I think everybody in my family was thinking about their own lives. And like, if I were to leave suddenly, how fucked up would it be for other people to deal with?
That's one thing Josh and I have both pushed for our parents, because our parents both had very messy wills and situations with siblings, and we've both told them, just put it all in black and white so we have no guesswork. Whatever you want to happen, just do it. We don't want to fight with our siblings. Because that's a real thing.
Yes.
When there's no will, or even a will, but just a standard.
Well, and also what people don't understand is like, so my dad's business, like if things are not 50, if you're married and you have a spouse, if things are not 50-50, everything needs to go through probate court. That is not 50-50. So let's say my dad's name was on their house, but my mom's wasn't. That wasn't the case. But it's not an automatic right of survivorship. So like my mom would have had to wait 2 months and go to probate court to get that, or like access to funds if you're not in a joint bank account. Like there's a lot to think about. And I would urge anyone that is, especially in our point of life where things become complicated, you have children, to really take a look at that and get some good estate planning and really think about, what things would look like. I know it's a really ugly thing to work through, but what things would look like if you weren't here.
And we've gone through that with the kids. And those lawyers, they know what they're doing. I mean, they walk you through it so easily.
They do.
They've seen all the things, the good, the bad, and the ugly, so they can really help guide you. And things they will bring up things that you have never even thought about before, but they know you need to do them.
That's exactly right. And it's a long meeting and it's important.
It's multiple meetings.
Yeah, but also think about, the way your life is structured, because that too can become problematic for your spouse.
Yeah.
So it opened up. I was just like, whoa, this is like very... Oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. So that was another unexpected part that I was just kind of like, oh God, okay. Like who saw this coming?
Well, and especially you're the one doing it.
Well, and people are like, grieve. And my mom's like, I want my house sold immediately. I don't ever want to go back there. I'm like,
is she living with you? Oh,
yeah. So she's we're really fortunate. Our setup, we bought our house. We bought and a bungalow income property next to it that's been we've been Airbnb-ing since we moved, and we're trying to encourage my mom to live there. We feel like moving through this grief, and you have a partner for 50 years and a husband for 50 years. I mean, partner in life, just best friend, and then suddenly they're gone. It feels very important that she's close to us in case she's having a bad day. So,
but yet she still has independence.
Exactly.
That is a nice setup.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we're very, very fortunate for this. So anyway, she is very adamant, about, not really wanting to ever sleep in that house again. And I'm fine with that. I think that's important to her. So it's important to me.
Yeah.
But I spent, half my day yesterday at the house, kind of, she wants it listed. She wants it. So just trying to help start that process, which is like clean, there's just
packing and cleaning.
I'm going to tell you one of the weirdest things is to do laundry for your father who has passed away and be, folding clothes and putting them in drawers. It's weird.
That was one thing with
really
my
weird.
grandma, because she was in a nursing home. I mean, they want you out of there because somebody's waiting on that room like within hours. Like there is no time. Like they are packing your stuff up before the funeral home gets there for the body. It is crazy.
Whoa. That's intense.
Yeah. And I had never experienced that before.
That's intense.
Because those beds are so hard to come by. You know, there's a waiting list and waiting lists.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know that part. I've
cow.
brought all the stuff
I've never
home
thought about that.
From the nursing home. It's just in your house.
They're like, pack your stuff.
What am I doing with this now? And you know, it's their sweater. It's their, you know, so you don't just want to toss it.
No, I'm like, I did like all the, I've like your dirty clothes hamper. I'm like washing and folding. And I'm just like, I
still have a basket of my grandma's clothes I brought home from the nursing home.
It's surreal. It's surreal.
So
it's a very weird experience.
Yeah.
You know,
it is. You're doing good.
Thanks.
I hope this might be helpful to you.
I think it's been really helpful. I hope it's been helpful to our listeners.
I think it will be. I mean, it was special to me to hear that because I've not spoken to many people about, you know, being in the room with someone you're really close to and passing.
Yeah.
Because, we're at that age.
We're
at the age of a lot of things.
We are, golly. I mean, you and I keep saying like, oh gosh, can it get any crazier? And
it
harder and, you know, and then you just get hit over the head.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
No.
I want to leave with one little story about my dad.
Okay.
We were, my uncle, the night before he left, everyone was flying out the next morning very early. And the night before he left, he said, well, let's go to we went to a very early dinner. No one had eaten.
It's that time of life, Katie.
I know. Well, we love it because we
eat at 5 like every day.
Well, we do dinner. So we love it. A, it saves a meal. And B, like you just eat your leftovers.
We're just so hungry. I don't know what's wrong with us.
Anyway, at 4:30, we went to dinner.
Early bird
like, let's go somewhere, you know, kind of. So we went to like this good spot and we all sat and we toasted to my dad or whatever. And I looked at my mom. My dad had this thing he said every time we ate. I mean, we could be eating, McDonald's. And once the food was all laid out, I looked at my mom and I said, you know what Dad would say right now? And she looked at me, she's like, get it up in ya. My dad would always say that, get it up in ya. And like, I mean, you could set your watch to the second he was going to say it, get it up in ya. So, you know, you have these wonderful moments where you get to remember these, like if Dad was here and my mom looked at me and she was like, Dad's watching us smiling right now.
So sweet.
That was really beautiful. So, you know, as we work through all of this, the complicated, you know, depths of grief, the heaviness of grief, the struggles of, you know, working through your own personal relationships in some cases with someone who's passed, it's really important to, you know, just remember the good too, because it's easy to focus on the things you would have done differently and the things you coulda, shoulda, woulda, but it's also really important to focus on the things that you remember that were great, more so than the other, because there's no change in any of it. No, there's not. It's just, you learn from it. You learn from it and you grow from it and, you know, you're grateful for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. We all really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate everyone for letting me come on and cry and just experience this. And, you know, I hope if you have, I had a friend who her dad passed suddenly the same morning as my dad.
Oh, wow.
In town. Yeah. My friend Elizabeth. So we were chatting a little bit about it, but anyway, very strange, but, you know, if you're experiencing it, like you're not alone. And if you have a friend who's experiencing it, just reach out in whatever way you can to know that you love, you know, let them know you love them.
Grief walk together.
Exactly.
Physically and mentally.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We love you.
Thanks,
we're here for you.
Too. I appreciate it. Thanks, Brandy.
We'll get funny again later. Okay. Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and can't wait to share another episode with you next Thursday.
Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. To keep up with the latest, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Podcast She Did What. We'll be sharing updates, behind the scenes, and announcements you won't want to miss.
And if there's anything you'd like to share with us, whether it be a personal story or feedback on our episodes, you can leave us a voicemail at 762-499-2201 or head over to our website, shedidwhatpodcast.com. Also, feel free to leave us a review down below. We'd love to know what you think.
She Did What is hosted by us, Brandy Chandler and Katie Jacobs, and produced by Studio D Podcast Production.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next Thursday. And remember, it isn't always easy, but it sure as hell can be entertaining.